Welcome back to Radio Row. Here with us are Philadelphia radio personalities Debbie Calton, Mike Vasilikos, and Paul Perillo.
All right, I'll ask the first audience question. This is submitted by Robert, who's here. How hard / easy is it to start your own radio channel / slow? I think this was more for me and Dan. You just talk to us after the show and we'll set you up at WEXP.
Yep, we'll hook you up.
So after you get your own show on WEXP, what do you think college radio broadcasters should do in order to try to get a job in that field?
Well, you have to be realistic. Are you talking about like getting a job after having a college radio show or just getting into your own college?
I guess more how could someone display that they have the skills that they need for a job using their radio show as kind of their resume?
I see, okay. Well, if you intend to continue on into a commercial career, you need to take that very seriously. You need to think about what you're doing there. You need to hone your skills. You need to work on your delivery. You can't be, I've heard, not so much recently, but sometimes you'll come across a college radio show where people are treating it just like a show out of their dorm. Don't do that. If you really want to learn, use everything you have available at your fingertips. Do everything, learn all the different operations of a radio station if you can, because you may not be able to jump into commercial radio into an on-air position. You may get your foot in, as you've done, with interning at a radio station, at my radio station, WMGK, by going into promotions or going into the engineering department. Learn everything you can to get your foot in the door. And then when you're there and you start proving that you're serious about it and that you're willing to do just about anything, then you'll be taken seriously and you just might be able to get that coveted on-air job. It's difficult to start in a major market straight from a college radio station, but it's not impossible. We've had interns who have just graduated from doing what they're doing within the station, within the company stations. We have 4 stations here in Philadelphia, but then go on to become promotion directors or whatever. Incredible success stories, but you have to take it seriously.
Everything Debbie just said. Plus, the other thing I would add in is one of the first lessons I had was air checking yourself. If you're serious about being on the radio or on television, tape yourself and force yourself to listen to it. Some people, it's easy to do it, they have no problem. Other people, they hear their own voice and they cringe and they don't like it and it's uncomfortable for them. Fight through it. Fight through it, you have to. That's the only way that you're going to get better. Even with people I know that have worked for years and years and years, air checking is still something that's really important to do. And the other thing, my mom's going to hate me for saying this, but be prepared to move. If you have to move, you have to move. I never thought I would leave New York. I got a job in Maryland. I got another job in Philadelphia. I left myself that flexibility to be able to move, to be able to do what I wanted to do, to land in a spot where I knew I can, do what I wanted to do, and that's a big part of it. You may end up in Iowa. You don't know where you're going to end up. But if it's something that you love to do and you want to follow that passion, be open-minded about it.
Yeah, I would say be open-minded, have a thick skin, and I think in the broadcast journalism class, one of the things that I stressed was, air checking is important. Sitting down with your supervisor, and he or she will probably say, you should change this, or don't hit this word that hard. On television, you got to watch, hand motions, facial gestures, and a lot of people are not ready for the criticism. And I said, if somebody wanted to make $1 million, they write a book on how to take criticism, because no one really likes to hear about what you're doing wrong. But if you take that and turn it around and use that as a way to make you better, then you've got it. I mean, I remember early, air check sessions with a program director, and I just wanted to go home and, and just say, yeah, maybe this isn't for me, because you really have to have a thick skin, because they will find everything wrong that's possible, but they're only doing it to make you a better broadcaster in the end. And at the very beginning, it's like, oh my God, I'll never get this. I'm never going to be able to figure this out. But with time, you start to incorporate all of that constructive criticism, and I think ultimately it makes you a better broadcaster.
Now, is there any additional skills that one might need? I know for WXP last year, we had a lot of technical issues, so and that can kind of keep going. They're kind of ongoing as well, too. Is there any additional skills, maybe such as technical, news writing, especially maybe for Paul, any additional skills, especially maybe now, more so than in years past, that you might need now to really do well in the radio industry?
Yeah, like Debbie said before, learn as much as you possibly can. The better the skill set that you could bring to a job interview, the better off I think your chances are. If early in my career, someone said, look, you might want to be a newscaster, but you might have to settle for doing overnights, an air shift. I don't want to be a disc jockey, I want to be a news person. So you really should know how to do everything, be very versatile. Look, if you are weak in the digital arts, like with television production, you really need to hone into it, because now it seems like every radio station has some visual component that's on the internet. There are many morning shows in Philadelphia that while they're doing the show live on the radio, there are also, a visual component. I mean, Preston and Steve, it's, one of the most famous, in the Philadelphia market. Not only are they broadcasting live on the radio, but there's a whole visual component that goes along with it too. So if you excel at television production, that's another feather in your cap.
I found when I first went into radio, I was an English major in college for the short time that I spent there. But that helped a whole lot to write things out. A lot of people just want to go off the cuff on the radio, and a lot of people do, and I do that sometimes. But it's better to start early on being focused. And sometimes if you looked at one of my music logs today, I write notes to myself constantly because I want to frame in my mind how I'm going to present the thought. I look ahead and I want to frame the thought. And learning, and I know that I make grammatical mistakes here and there sometimes on the air, but the better command that you have of the language and how to present it, the more professional, obviously, you're going to sound. And again, just being able to write out a few sentences, having a structure so you get to your point, I think is a really good thing to hone early on. And as Paul said, and Mike also, you have to be willing. I think I worked 7 radio stations, or like within 6 years or something like that. I moved a whole lot. And you also have to be prepared to not always move obviously forward. Sometimes you might take a step into a bigger market, but you might be doing an overnight shift, or you might be doing a part-time shift. I never charted my career path, but the way that it unfolded was often just what I said. I would take a weekend job somewhere just to get into the next step up in a market.
So you just kind of perfectly segued into one of our audience questions that is in my hand somewhere. But sorry, whoever the audience member is, but they asked how hard or easy is it to climb up the ladder? Let's not beat around the bush, it's hard. So can you talk about, getting to the position you're at now? I mean, I guess you've talked about what happens on the air side, but there's an emotional part, there's parts that nobody can foresee, so can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, here I was a South Philly kid, lived my whole life in the city, and had an internship, worked my way up through WEXP, and I thought, I'm taking the world by storm. I'm going to get hired. I didn't have high expectations. I knew I wasn't going to work on one of the big Philadelphia radio stations because I myself knew that I wasn't qualified to do it. But I thought I could land a job in Atlantic City, Harrisburg, Delaware. Rejection, rejection, rejection. And so I just figured, well, I'm just going to keep, pushing forward. And I got hired in the Midwest, so I had to go out to the Midwest. My goal was, when I graduated LaSalle, by the time I was 25, I would be working at a Philadelphia radio station. So I knew exactly where I wanted to be at the age of 25. Maybe that was a bit aggressive in my case. By the time I was like 22, I was back home working at a radio station, and then worked up through the radio station, overnight shift to morning drive to afternoon drive became the news director. So I think it's okay. I mean, you don't have to have an idea where you're going or what you're doing, but never lose sight of where you ultimately want to be. And if you want to work at a major market station, yeah, it's going to take a little bit of time to get there, but I think today one of the pitfalls is that when students graduate, they just want to sit in Jim Gardner's seat at Channel 6. Ain't going to happen. Not graduating any school and taking that dive into action news. It's not going to happen. You could say maybe 10 years from now, I might be there and work at other markets outside and ultimately make that your goal to work back in Philadelphia.
It's a tough industry. I mean, this is a tough industry. In my personal experience, I got really lucky, and I know I got really lucky, but along with that came some hard knocks along the way. I got a job that I was way out of my league getting, and it was basically because nobody else wanted to do it. I mean, they had a radio station that was brand new, a format that was brand new. They didn't have a budget. They had to just, whatever money was there, that was good enough for me. Like I told you, I worked free for the first 6 months or whatever it was, just because I wanted that job. But here you are, 22, 23 years old, and when somebody calls out, you have to go in and do that air shift. When labels are calling and they're trying to get the records on the air, I was on the other end. When the automation system goes down, you spend all night at the radio station with the software company trying to get the station back on the air. And my friends are down at the bar having fun, and you're pulling wires out and you don't even know where they go. You got to be willing to do really whatever it takes. But at the end of the day, if that's what you want to do, if that's what you love, if it's connecting people to who want to hear music or whatever your specific target is in broadcasting, sports, music, news, if that's what you want to do, then you make it happen.
I'm going to go back to something Debbie said earlier about commitment. And I tell this story, and a lot of people look at me and they're like, you did what? It was back in '83. There was a major snowstorm in Philadelphia, maybe '82, '83. And at the time I was working at WWDB in Philadelphia, was the talk station in Philly. And I was a part-timer. And I got the call like 4 o'clock in the afternoon that the overnight person wasn't going to be able to make it in. Would I be interested in coming work the overnight Friday shift into Saturday? Sure, not a problem. I'd live near the Broad Street line. I could take the Broad Street line up to Broad and Walnut and get the bus to get me out to Conshohocken State Road. So I left the house maybe about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It was snowing. It was really coming down. By the time I got off at Broad and Walnut, SEPTA had shut down. And here's one of those moments where it's like, what do I do? Do I go home? And my career probably would have been over. Or do I push forward? So I'm starting to think now, well, SEPTA's not running. I got to get out to City Avenue. I'm going to walk over to the Sheridan at that time, it was at 16th and JFK, because there's cabs. There's always a cab in front of a hotel. Not during this snowstorm, no cab. So I'm like, okay, I'm at 16th and JFK. I'm going to walk to 30th Street. 30th Street Station, train station, there's got to be a cab there, right? So I'm trudging through the snow. And I know I've still got plenty of time to get in for the midnight shift. Get to 30th Street, no cab. So again, what do I do? Do I throw my hands up in the air and say, hey, I gave it a shot? Right then and there, because the snow was coming down at a pretty decent clip, I noticed on the roadway, I saw headlights come up around 30th Street. And I knew it was a cab, and it was a cab. I jumped into the cab. Meanwhile, all these people are coming out of 30th Street now because they want that same cab. I'm like, no, I just said to the guy, I'll pay you whatever you want, just get me out to City Avenue. It was the worst cab ride I've ever had in my entire life. I mean, even being in New York, with all due respect to New York, and I made it well with enough time to get there for the midnight shift. So whenever it snows, my wife was like, do you really have to go to work? And I'm like, my career was made in the blizzard of '83. So wow. This is, but I was committed. I was going to do it. Hell, high water, and even a blizzard, I was going to do this.
Yeah. That's what it takes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to shift gears a little bit here and actually go back to something we've talked about earlier, and that is the competition in the radio industry right now. And this will, I think, going to continue over to the next section a little bit. But I'll start the conversation now. And there's a little bit of a battle going on right now between radio and some other competitors like Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora. What are some of the strategies that radio stations today kind of employ to kind of really combat the music libraries, the podcasts that are just increasingly at the fingertips of the world at large?
Well, the live and local factor is huge. It can't be underestimated. We can't compete with somebody's playlist on their phone necessarily, because that is so individualized. And in the case of MGK, we're a very structured classic rock station. A lot of the music has a higher repetition than somebody would have, on Spotify or wherever else they might go. But I can look out the window and say, it's sunny right now. Oh, but wait, is that right? Is that snow in this case in the last couple of weeks? Oh, it's snow, Or you can say, on the Schuylkill, I just heard that there's this overturned tractor trailer. Or, you can identify with your audience. And I think people time and time again tune in for that. That can't be replaced on, I remember when Sirius XM, when that first came in, satellite radio, everybody said, well, that's the death of terrestrial radio. Didn't affect us. It's there. We're aware of it. We're aware that there are all those specific channels out there, but it hasn't affected us because, again, people know that they can call on the phone. I'm going to answer that phone. I can look out the window. I can experience the same thing in real time that they're experiencing.
One of the reasons I got into radio, companionship. When you're in your car and Debbie's on the radio, that's your friend. That's your musical companion for that ride, wherever you're going to be. That's what radio's always sort of been about to me. And those services don't really offer that. The streaming platforms and stuff like that. I think it's important for radio stations nowadays to embrace a lot of the technology. When you look at Alexa and the iHomes and those things, those are moving faster than some stations can keep up with right now. In-home listening, that's a big impact. So I think stations have to strategize around that stuff. They have to strategize around podcasts. I do think that on-demand listening, when somebody wants to listen to a podcast about the Rolling Stones, Exile on Main Street, they want to do it on their own time sometimes. So it's important stations have to embrace those things. But Debbie's right. Live, local, that essence of companionship, it goes a long way.
Yeah. And your stations are integrating some of those other aspects, right? Yeah. You have a podcast?
I've been amazed at the explosion of the popularity of podcasts. But yeah, we all do them. We do them on a regular basis. Each month I'll record something. It's actually been a good memory-inducing exercise for me to think back. We tell little stories about encounters that we've had, just experiences that we've had. People love them. They love them. And also, we're talking about Alexa. Instead of ignoring, you embrace that. We incorporate that into promotions. It's not going to go away. It's what people are experiencing. You have to be a part of all the technology that is rapidly evolving.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, we're going to go to a quick break. I'll be back in a few minutes. Don't leave. Stick around.